Welcome to the Effortless English Show with the world's #1 English teacher, AJ Hogue, where AJ's more than 40 million students worldwide finally learn English once and for all, without the boring textbooks, classrooms, and grammar drills. Here's AJ with a quick piece to help you learn to speak fluent English effortlessly.
I'm AJ Hogue, the author of Effortless English, Learn to Speak English Like a Native. Father of the Effortless English System, I train you, I teach you to speak English fluently, powerfully, confidently, and effortlessly. Go to effortlessenglishclub.com, effortlessenglishclub.com, and join my VIP program, Commit and Don't Quit. Welcome. Today we have a live interview talking again with Acharyaji. Acharyaji, and we'll be discussing America, actually. America and, the real America, not the illusion, not the America of movies in Hollywood, but what's really going on in America, and what are some of the challenges, especially the spiritual challenges facing America and indeed the world, since America is the big superpower. What happens in America, of course, influences and affects all over the world. I think it's going to be very interesting. So let's go ahead and just get started. I'm going to call him now. Hello.
Very good, AJ.
Nice to see you. Namaste to you.
It's very good to see you.
Yes, it's been a while.
Yes, I'm doing well.
Good. I hope all is going well there.
Very, very nicely. Yes, thank you.
Great.
I'm very much looking forward to this interview today.
Yes, me too. I've had a kind of a crazy 4 to 6 weeks, and it's really great to be back and talking to you again.
Very good. Yeah, are we live now, or
we're live now? Yep, we are here.
Oh, okay, very good.
Just jumping right in.
Sure.
Sorry about that. Yes, indeed. Just jumped right in.
No problem. Oh, that's very, very good. Well, again, very good to see you, and thank you again for having me on.
Yes, indeed. Well, let's just jump in then. So today's topic, I think, very interesting. We have discussed this before, having a discussion about this. The real America, as opposed to the America that Hollywood presents, because, I know that I get comments a lot on my YouTube channel about, that are based on, I want to go to America, and people kind of think still there's this image of that everything's perfect in America, and you come to America and you're just going to become rich, easily. And of course we know that that's not the case, that there are a great many challenges, especially I would say spiritual challenges facing the United States. So what could you just I'm going to be very general and let you mostly talk about this, but how do you see that gap, the reality versus the manufactured image that so many people have?
Sure, definitely. Well, again, yeah, this is I think a very important topic, especially for your audience. Given the fact that, of course, everyone in your audience wants to learn English, and they're at various stages in that process. And I'm sure with many of them, yes, their goal is, if not to eventually settle here, then certainly to visit America, see America at some point. Because, we need to be honest about this. America is the most prevalent nation on the face of the earth. America is the superpower. America is the superpower in several ways, actually. Certainly militarily, economically, etc., but more than anything, culturally. And this is the aspect that most people throughout the world know about America, and this is how they encounter America, is through the culture especially. So that being the case, yes, this is a very important topic. And let me say this, that yes, unfortunately, much of what is presented about life in America through the media, through Hollywood, through American television, through movies, through the music, much of which is American, et cetera, et cetera. Again, it doesn't matter where you are in this world. You can be somewhere in Europe, you can be in Afghanistan, you can be in Vietnam, you could be anywhere. And everyone has some connection with American culture, even if it's just the music. Well, unfortunately, of course, yes, what is presented in all of this so-called American culture very often is not the true America at all. And a very easy proof of that is very simply those individuals who have seen the culture from afar, from other countries outside of America, and then they come here and they see firsthand that the American people are nothing like how they're presented. American culture, American politics, et cetera, et cetera. They see with their own eyes that it's a radically different vision. And in fact, if anything, many of them will come here with presuppositions expecting America to be a certain way. Then they get here, and in some cases, it's radically different. In many cases, the opposite of how Hollywood has presented American culture. Now, before I go on, I just want to say a few preliminary little personal marks, actually, about America and my relationship with America very specifically, before I go on. Because the thing is, I don't want people to in any way have the idea that this is going to be some sort of instance where I'm going to be in any way bashing America or just talking about the negative aspects of America. No, not at all. On the contrary. In fact, it will surprise people that, yes, much of what they have heard about America that they think is good is actually the opposite, and then vice versa. Much of the bad things that they have heard about America are not the case at all, and in fact, the opposite. I love America. I was born here. I was raised here. In fact, if anything, this may surprise a small number of people. It shouldn't. For myself being a spiritual teacher, I am an American patriot, personally. I love America. This is my nation. This is my only nation. I am a nationalist. I believe in the American vision, in the American story, in American ideals. I do indeed even believe in American exceptionalism. And I know that that's a tricky point for some people. But if we understand, again, the history of America and what has made America so great, thus why so many millions and millions of people are desperate to come here, it shouldn't be a surprise that America is indeed an exceptional nation. Now, speaking about that exceptionalism, the exceptionalism is not a type of, let's say, superiority complex on the part of Americans. This is not what makes America exceptional. Rather, what makes America exceptional and truly a wonderful place is one thing, and that is our love of freedom. Love of freedom. And this is something which, of course, goes back to the very beginning of America. We have to keep in mind that in 1776, certainly before then, even for some time afterwards, America was a great experiment. At that time, roughly 240 years ago or so, there was very little freedom in the world, relatively speaking, and especially compared to today. You had mostly monarchies, you had dictatorships, you had tyrannies, you had all sorts of different forms of government. But the idea of Americans being individuals who are deserving of rights and freedom, and more than this, the idea that government is not there to replace God and to be an authority that we are simply slaves to, but rather that government is meant to serve the people. This is an idea that, for the most part, came about with the American Revolution. I mean, arguably, of course, you had the Athenian democracy before then. You had a few instances in history, but they didn't last very long. But the very first time when this concept of inherent freedom, the inherent freedom of the individual, the first time that this was put down in a serious constitution that has now lasted for, again, roughly 240 years, the first time that this happened was 1776. First time that this happened was with the beginning of the American Revolution and these ideals coming about. So again, I hope people understand at this point that I'm not going to be bashing America at any point during our interview, but rather a lot of the misconceptions that people have.
Right.
Now, with that as an important little preface, yes, unfortunately, the misconceptions are mind-boggling. It's interesting how, just recently I saw this little, like a little political cartoon showing a so-called redneck in France. It was something like that. And of course, it showed the stereotypical idea that of what many individuals throughout the world have of the typical American. And what is that? Well, the typical American, again, in the minds of many people who don't really know Americans, oh, they tend to be self-centered. They tend to be hyper-patriotic. They walk around with shirts with the American flag on them, and they're very rude, and they don't know much about the rest of the world, et cetera, et cetera. This, let's say, jingoist sort of stereotype of the American is the opposite of the truth. In fact, if anything, as I've said, most individuals, when they visit America for the first time, the first thing that strikes them is when they begin to actually speak to Americans, is that Americans tend to be, with, of course, some exceptions, they tend to be the nicest, most tolerant, most open-minded, most welcoming people in the world. And this, in fact, is indeed something that always amazes people. Especially, of course, if you come to the Midwest or the South. I know you're
yes,
from the
indeed. Yes, I am.
This is a little bit less the case. Certainly, if you are in New York or Los Angeles or, let's say, a big place like Chicago, for example.
Right.
But if you're in the Midwest and the South, which is really the heart of America, what you will find is that we have the most welcoming and warmest and most open people in the world. It's just truly amazing. So that's one thing, one stereotype that certainly isn't true. The other stereotype is that of rampant materialism. Oh my Lord, so many people throughout the world have this idea that, again, when you come to America, what you're going to find is an anarchistic, capitalistic free-for-all. And everyone here is cutthroat, and everyone here is just out to make money, and everyone is greedy and materialistic, etc. Again, it depends on where you are. If you're in Manhattan, you'll find that more.
Yeah.
Manhattan, but Manhattan is a tiny fraction of America. You know, it's one city, and even with the city, Manhattan is only part of New York City. So certainly there are some pockets of places where you will find such rampant materialism. But again, if you go to the heartland of America, which is where the vast majority of true Americans are, what you will find are, on the contrary, people who are giving, people who are very, very charitable. You know, many people have pointed this out, that America is probably the most charitable nation on the face of the earth. America gives to the poor throughout the world, both privately, through nonprofits, through government, etc. We give more to the poor throughout the world than any other nation on earth, maybe every nation combined. So again, this is another stereotype that when you come here, everyone's just going to be just very rough and just out to steal from you, etc. There are many other stereotypes that we can go into. But again, let's actually look at where these stereotypes come from. And that is media.
Yes.
This is something that I cannot emphasize enough, especially for your viewers, individuals who, again, live all over the world. And for the most part, you know, they may have met a few Americans, but for the most part, the image that they have of America is through American movies, you know, through these crazy blockbusters like The Avengers and Transformers and all these crazy movies, the music, etc. Again, it has to be emphasized that the media complex that exists in America is something which maybe surprisingly to much in your audience, the media complex is absolutely divorced from the American people.
Yes, indeed. Right. And hostile in many ways.
Yes. And that's something that, again, most people don't know. A lot of people may have the idea that, oh, the American media and the American people are on the same side and work in unison, and the American media represents the American people. No, on the contrary. On the contrary. And all you need to do is, again, speak to the American people, and they themselves will tell you. You know, what I'm telling you now in America is not controversial.
Right. Yes, indeed.
Nothing of what I'm telling you now is controversial. If you speak to, again, just an average, typical American, especially someone who lives in the Midwest or the South or someplace where, again, people are just a lot more real, they will all tell you this. The first thing that they'll say to a visitor to America is, oh my God, please don't take Hollywood seriously. We hate Hollywood.
Yes.
Hollywood does not represent our values. It doesn't represent our beliefs. It doesn't represent the spirit of the American people. And in fact, what is wonderful is that today, especially for the last few years, people are very vocal about this. People will tell you that the American media is indeed, as far as values, as far as belief system, completely opposed to the American people and to American ideals. In fact, our president, President Trump, has said several times on his Twitter feed and many other places that much of the American media is the enemy of the people. The vast majority of the people would agree with that.
Yes, indeed.
Regardless of what the media says. Of course, the media will try to pretend that, oh, no, the people and the media are one, and the people of America completely agree with everything that the media is doing. No, that is not the case. The people themselves truly believe today, in this year, in 2019, that the media is practically their enemy. What the media actually represents is an elite core of individuals who are comprised of a tiny, tiny minority of people who have their own agenda. And that agenda is something that is completely and radically separate from the American agenda and the agenda of the American people. And this is another impression that people often have when it comes to the media, and that is, because the media is so prevalent, we tend to think that media people, all of these people, whether it's producers, writers for TV shows, etc., that these people must represent a very large segment of the American population. In fact, it's interesting. I remember a few years ago, actually, I had finished giving a talk, and afterwards we were talking about the media, and I was talking to someone who, this was in a very large American liberal city, and I remember speaking to this person, and he was completely convinced that the media was a good force. And I asked him a question. I said, let me ask you something. All these people who you see in the media, whether it's the actors, TV show hosts, news anchors, etc., what percentage of the population do you think they are? Mm-hmm. And this person wasn't sure, but he said, I don't know, 20%? And I said to him, do you understand that less than 1 out of 1,000 people, probably 1 out of 10,000, works for the media? Mm-hmm. No, they're not 20%. They're not even 1%. These people represent no one. They are such a tiny fraction of the American public, but yet because they have a large voice and a large presence, and because they're omnipresent, on our phones, with every screen that we see, we tend to think that the people who even work for the media, this must represent a very large segment of society. No, the employees of the media represent no one. They are minuscule, absolutely minuscule. So yes, it's amazing how this tiny portion of the American society has such enormous power, to the point where they have been able to brainwash the American people for 70 years now, more or less. Mm-hmm. Maybe more if you also include movies, then going back 100 years, basically. This tiny segment of the population has such an overwhelming degree of power that they have been able to not only brainwash the American people for generation after generation until just recently, but they have had the ability, again, to portray an artificial worldview to the entire world.
Yes, indeed.
And indeed to change world culture. And it's sickening how you see so many traditional cultures, especially throughout the world, that have been subverted by American culture. For example, I'll give you one example of something that I read. This was a long time ago. This was maybe even 30 years ago or so, when they still had TV Guide magazine. Do you remember that
Yep.
TV Guide? Yeah, everyone had TV Guide. This was before the internet, But yeah, everybody had a copy of TV Guide, in their living room, so they could know what was going to be on television. Well, I remember, looking at this article, and I looked at it because it was about India, and of course I had a tremendous interest in India at the time. But I read this article about how previous to, and again, this was maybe the 80s, maybe late 80s, but previous to that time, the American TV show I Love Lucy had never been seen in India. But now suddenly, for some reason, some deal happened, whatever. And now suddenly I Love Lucy, these old reruns, were being shown all throughout India, in big cities and the smallest villages. And in this article, it was explaining that the TV show was so popular to the point where that year alone, tens of thousands of young girls were given the name Lucy.
Interesting. Wow.
And I remember reading this and thinking to myself, how incredibly tragic and sad this is. that, in India especially, of course, if you're a Hindu in India, you're given beautiful Sanskrit names, as your name. You're named after a goddess. You're named after some beautiful virtue like bhakti or satya or something that you're meant to emulate. You're literally named after devotion or truth or something like that.
Yeah.
And now here is this useless TV show from the 1950s that now suddenly the Indians are seeing for the first time, so they think it's brand new. And they're so enamored that they're literally naming their daughters, their precious daughters, after some fictional TV character. I remember reading this and just thinking, how sad. And what's even more sad, this is just one out of thousands of such examples that we can give of traditional cultures throughout the world that have been literally subverted by American culture, where, yes, you have nations where now, people are worshiping Michael Jackson, even though he was at his peak, like 30 years ago.
Yeah.
And they're worshiping all these American icons that Americans don't even follow anymore, So yeah, it's a very tragic thing when you see American culture subverting traditional cultures. But these are just the surface level ways that I'm out in which cultures are subverted. Of course, it's more in the realm of ideas than anything. So what does Hollywood represent? Again, it represents its own worldview. It doesn't represent Americanism, or it doesn't represent spirituality, the Constitution, etc. Rather, what it represents is indeed this globalist ideology, this ideology in which the idea is that nations are evil, national borders are evil, diversity is an evil thing. There should ultimately be, this is their hope and their desire, ultimately one world government, one culture, one language, one religion. And what will that one thing be? What the elite dictate.
Yep.
This is what Hollywood represents. And this is the most pernicious, unfortunately, aspect of Hollywood, is that in much of their content, either overtly, but more very often subconsciously, they try to give the world public these ideas. They try to go past their conscious mind and their reasoning faculty, and through the emotion of fiction, they try to give them these messages that, oh yes, your idea of being a patriot of your specific nation and loving your people and speaking your language and keeping your traditions and your spirituality alive. Oh, this is all primitive and superstitious. Rather, what should our goal be? It should be something akin to Star Trek.
Yeah, right.
It should be the idea that, and of course, Star Trek is amazing. They've had, I don't know how many, maybe a half dozen Star Trek TV series now, starting with the original series and, of course, all the Star Trek movies. But this is their vision for the future. It's, of course, a very idealized vision where somehow, inexplicably, all greed is gone, all human nature has been subverted, etc. And we have this global civilization where, of course, you'll notice what their vision is. There is no religion, really. Religion is gone. Spirituality is gone.
Yep.
But there is one government, and there is, again, one unified culture, and diversity itself is eradicated. Well, this is the ideology. This globalism is the ideology, indeed, of Hollywood. So this is why, known or unknown to us as viewers, this is the primary message that is being given to us by Hollywood again and again and again. And when you have a propagandistic message that is forcefully foisted upon your conscious and subconscious mind repeatedly, what is that? That's brainwashing.
Yeah.
That's brainwashing. And more, it's a tyrannical sort of brainwashing. You see, to learn anything, of course, we learn things by rote. We repeat things. That's perfectly fine. But we do these things of our own free will. We choose that, all right, I want to learn a certain subject. I want to learn mathematics. Well, okay, you have to memorize the multiplication table. So you repeat it to yourself again and again and again. You're doing that to yourself of your own free will for a positive goal and a positive outcome. What Hollywood and this entire media matrix complex does to us, on the other hand, is it does this to us without our choice. It does this to us without letting us know what they're doing. It's an unethical practice of brainwashing. And the thing is, to their credit, these people are brilliant.
Yeah.
It is done in a way where it's done in such a subtle manner that as far as most people are concerned, oh, it's just entertainment. It's
Yeah.
just innocent entertainment. And unless you are truly aware of the messages that you're being given by Hollywood and by the American media, unless you are aware of the nature of those messages, you wouldn't even know. You would think that, oh, yes, you're just watching something funny, some sitcom, and just laughing and enjoying yourself. But the sitcom itself is giving you a specific message through the story structure, through the characters, through the ultimate outcome of what happens with every fictional scenario, etc. So, yes, again, the reason why we're focusing on media so much when it comes to the real America is this is how people, for the most part, outside of America, this is how they encounter America.
Yes.
And how sad is it that other than maybe meeting an American that's visiting their country and they get to know, how sad is it that this is their first and most powerful contact with American culture? So it's very important for people to understand this, and people in your audience especially, because I know you have one of the most diverse audiences in the world. So many people from so many different nations, religion backgrounds, language groups, etc. Watch your show. And again, they're all inspired to learn English. Much of it, is because of American culture, because they want to either visit or move to America, etc. Maybe the UK. And, the UK also has similar problems. Most of the Western nations now have similar problems compared to what we've been talking about with Hollywood. They all each have their own media, let's say, filmmaking complex as well. But it's important for the people in your audience to understand that if they want to understand the real America, do not understand it through the media. If they want to understand the real America, and in fact, let me tell you, in just a very overt way, if people in your audience want to understand what the real America is, this is the way to do it. Don't watch American movies anymore, number one. Don't watch American TV. Do not watch American news networks. And specifically, I can tell you, let me be blunt, CNN is a lie.
Yes.
CNN, everything they tell you, for the most part, of course, they have no choice but to say some true things. But politically speaking, CNN, Donald Trump is correct about this. It is fake news, but it's not just CNN, MSNBC, ABC News, etc. We can go through the entire line. Do not get your information from these news networks. Now, where do you get your information from? First of all, face-to-face. Again, speak to actual Americans, and especially speak to those Americans who are like the ones I've described, good, earnest, ethical individuals who are from the Midwest, from the South, from areas where these areas represent the true heartland of America. Go to alternative places on the internet. There are so many alternative websites now, YouTube channels, BitChute channels, just so many places where you can actually get a very good idea of what America truly is like, true news of what is actually happening in America, a true representation of how the American people think, both historically, but also today as well, etc. Go to these alternative sites. And of course, it takes a little bit of effort on your part. These sites are not going to be just presented to you immediately by, again, the corrupt media. You have to look for them. And especially YouTube. Unfortunately, YouTube has gotten very bad at this. As we know, they have been hiding alternative voices now. Yeah. This was not the case a few years ago. It was not the case. A few years ago, you could have done a simple search and you would have gotten a diversity of opinion. Now, oh my God, you can search the most obscure topic on earth. And I've done this because I'm a researcher, and sometimes I'm looking for something on YouTube because I want to find more about something. You can look up the most obscure topic, the most general topic, it doesn't matter. And the first maybe several hundred search results that you'll get back will be NBC, CNN, The Guardian, and on, all extreme mainstream media. This was not the case 3 years ago. 3 years ago or so, YouTube, and it's not just YouTube, I don't want to pick on them, it's Facebook, it's all of these social media platforms. they are no longer honest. You can't even search for what you are truly looking for anymore. They will not give you honest search results. They'll give you what they want you to see. This is
Yep.
how desperate they've become. Now, this is the question. Why do they do this? Why are they doing this now suddenly? Very simply, it's because now millions of people are searching for the truth,
Yeah.
and it has frightened them to death. It's, as I was saying before, people have woken up. People understand that the mainstream media, this controlled media, this contrived media, people know it's not giving them the truth. As a result, millions of people are searching for, again, alternative channels, voices, etc. The owners of these platforms have seen this. They don't like it. They don't like the fact that people don't trust them anymore. So what are they doing? They're being unethical. They're being dishonest. They are literally lying to people. You know, if I search, I can search anything. If I do a search for my own name, I'll get CNN. I've never been on CNN.
Right. Yeah.
I'll get the first result will be, I can look up, Sri Dharma Pravartika Acharya. Okay, boop, search. CNN, MSNBC, The Guardian. I've never been on any of these places. Why are these coming up?
Yes.
Again, it's a dishonest practice on the part of the media. But still, despite this, we need to do our homework, we need to do our own work, and we need to search for alternative voices if we want to know what the real America is like, and for that matter, not just America, if we want to know what is actual reality, what is really happening in the world. If we want to know this, we have to bypass all mainstream media. And again, that means not just American media, which is predominant, but we need to bypass the BBC. Mm-hmm. We need to bypass the mainstream media of most nations, unfortunately. And this is how bad things have become. There is this disconnect that has been purposefully created and cultivated for several decades now. First in America, then all of Europe, but now it's infected the entire world. Almost every single nation on earth has this artificial media complex that is completely divorced from its people, from its local people.
Yeah.
This is true, again, almost anywhere. This is true in Egypt. This is true in Saudi Arabia. This is true in, mention a country. It's true there as well. So unfortunately, this is a model that has been duplicated by almost every nation on earth, where the media doesn't represent the local people. The media of Saudi Arabia does not represent the Saudi people. The media of Afghanistan does not represent the Afghan people. The media of pick a nation, it doesn't matter. It does not represent the actual people, meaning the actual concerns, the actual worldview, the actual values of the local people. Rather, all of these medias combined really represent the same thing, but with different faces. You see, the Afghan media will have an Afghan face. The Japanese media will have a Japanese face, et cetera, et cetera. But really, they all represent the same thing, and that is this globalist elite alliance that is there in order to eradicate the people's will and to create, again, one world government.
Now, I'm going to just follow up on your on that topic as well, and basically, as you were talking, I feel like you're kind of describing that what is happening, that despite the greater efforts of censorship, mind control, brainwashing, all of these things by the media, by this globalist media, as you said, but there seems to be a kind of awakening, mental, spiritual, cultural awakening that certainly in the United States and I think all over the world it's happening. And I wonder if you could talk more about that, if you see that happening, and how can we join that and strengthen that individually and as groups?
Mm-hmm, absolutely. Yes, that's a very, very important point. And it's very interesting how it seems like we started with the real America, which we did talk about a little bit, but very naturally, yes, we're going to what is actually a very, very important issue, and that is this issue of waking people up. Yeah. And how it's very true that throughout the world, this situation that I've described is something that is changing now all throughout the world. One could say possibly starting with America, but now it's become a global phenomenon where, again, people are starting to question everything. Whereas in the past, people in their local nations, they just trusted their government for the most part. I mean, in many places, of course, they knew their government was corrupt, but still, for the most part, they just kind of, let's say, submitted to their government. That's a better word. Not so much trusted, but they submitted to their local government. They submitted to the local media, etc. That is much less the case today. And it did begin with America. Because again, with the birth of the internet and with such platforms as YouTube, where suddenly seemingly everyone had a voice, now you were hearing alternative views, not just what the mainstream, quaffed, very, very good looking anchor is trying to convince you of. No, now that you have many, many different voices, beginning around 2006 or so, suddenly people began to realize, oh my God, yeah, there are other ways of thinking. What I've been taught all of my life, and more than this, maybe even my parents and my parents' parents, what we have been taught all of our life is not necessarily true, and in fact is the opposite. Yeah. This whole revolution, again, began really in America with the internet. It very quickly spread throughout the rest of the world. And this is something that we have to be extremely grateful for, is the fact that people are indeed beginning to see this. They are beginning to wake up. We have to be extremely positive about this. This is what occurs. It's a multi-tier. First of all, you have, let's say, any given nation where, again, they've been going through brainwashing for however many generations. Well, these people begin to hear alternative views, alternative voices. The second stage is they begin to wake up. First, a small number of people, but then the masses begin to wake up. So the vast majority of the population begin to understand, wow, we've been given lies all of our lives. The third step is a reaction. When that occurs, then the reaction takes place. And the government, and in many cases, not the government overtly, but through, again, the media, will begin to counterattack in many different ways. Yes. This is where the censorship starts. This is when the demonization starts. Oh, everything that you're saying, oh, it's just conspiracy theory. Oh, no, you're just crazy people. You're extremists. You're this, you're that. They'll call you many different names. Well, that's the necessary reaction because the power structure is scared to death that the people are waking up.
Yeah.
Well, what then happens? The fourth stage, the people in one way or another, and it's different in different nations, the people get organized. And conjointly with that, a leader arises. And as a result, hopefully through the democratic process, in some cases not, in some cases slightly more forcefully, but in most cases, through the democratic process, the people with this newfound awakened movement and leader, etc., they elect the previous government out of power. And now the people, once again, are controlling their nation. Well, this has happened again and again and again. This happened in America in November of 2016 with the election of Donald Trump. And if you want, we can talk about that in a little while as well. I have about 12 more minutes, unfortunately. Yes, I understand. I have my own live stream afterwards and a few other things. But this has spread throughout many nations in Europe. This has spread to Brazil. This has spread to nations all throughout the world, to the Philippines, India. People may not be aware of this. I know many of your viewers are in India. Yes. Narendra Modi is the most incorruptible politician in the history of India. He is the most amazing prime minister. This is why in the last election he won by, I believe, I could be wrong, the biggest landslide in Indian history. Oh, wow. He represents the people. He represents the people. Now we have truly people's representatives, not corrupt, evil politicians imposed upon the people from above, from an elite evil cabal, but rather we have individuals who are rising from the people and being supported by the masses. This is what is called populism. They've even tried to give the word populism a very bad slant now, where they try to pretend that populism is a bad thing, whereas all throughout history, what does populism mean? People understand what populism means. It is support of the masses. Here is a politician who is not being imposed upon us, by people above us, by the media, by other politicians. No, here is an individual who the people have chosen as their leader. Is this not democracy? What is democracy? Democracy is the idea that we choose our representatives. Well, unfortunately, in many of the so-called democracies, we've been living under artificial democracies, false democracies, where, again, the reason why there are so many corrupt politicians is these politicians are not supported by the people. They never were. They were supported by the power structure, by the elite demonic power structure. Now, finally, indeed, people are waking up. There is a great awakening that is happening all throughout the globe, and people now finally are saying, we want our representatives to rule over us. Not who you oligarchs or media representatives say should be ruling over us. So there is a great revolution that's happening, and this is the thing that's miraculous. And I'll end with this.
Yes.
If you have, in case you have any more questions. It's happening for the most part completely nonviolently.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
Completely nonviolently. It's happening through the ballot box. Through the ballot box. Again, we've seen in Europe alone, Hungary, Poland, Italy, we've seen Brexit. We've seen so many instances where the people are finally voicing their own beliefs and concerns for maybe the first time in generations, and they are winning. We've seen this in Brazil. We've seen this, I can give so many nations now where this is happening. And it all began with America. It all began with this revolution that happened here in America, where this individual who is not a corrupt politician, who was known throughout his life for actually being someone who had tremendous personal integrity. People don't know this about Donald Trump. And if your audience doesn't know this by now, they probably can tell I am indeed a supporter of Donald Trump. People don't know this about him. This man doesn't smoke cigarettes. This man does not drink alcohol. This man doesn't take drugs. This man actually has integrity. Anything that you have heard about him to the contrary is indeed a lie. If you look at his actual life and people around him who have known him for years and years, even people who knew him and they don't really even like him so much anymore, they will all tell you, no, he's a man of integrity. I may disagree with him, but he says what he believes. And what he is doing as president of the United States, he is doing because he believes that what he is doing is representing and serving the people of America, period. Period.
Yes, indeed.
A lot of people don't know that he has lost a third of his wealth since being elected.
Oh, wow.
This is an absolute fact. And the media is never going to tell you this. The media will tell you the opposite. Oh, no, he's president so he can become richer. Actually, I take that back. It was since he announced he was going to run. It was since 2015. From 2015 till now, he has lost a third of his wealth. This is not a man who ran for president to become wealthy. He's lost a third of his money, and he doesn't care. And he gives his yearly salary as president, over $400,000, away to charity every year. He doesn't even accept a salary. How many people know this? Again, the media will not tell you these facts. So, in any case, I'll give it back over to you, see if there are any other questions.
Well, I know you've got it. Yeah, I know I promised you that I would not go too long with you because I know you have an appointment just after this, starting your own live stream. So I'll just wrap it up then, and we'll talk again. So there's always like 100 more things we could talk about. So
absolutely.
Yeah. So just want to say thank you so much, and we'll have you back again soon. And if you could, where will you be having your live stream? Because people could just jump over there now if they would like.
Oh, yes. It's going to be on our channel. It's going to be the Dharma Nation channel. So on YouTube. Yeah, if they simply go to youtube.com/Dharma Nation.
Okay.
All over Dharma Nation. Yes, we're going to be doing that in approximately, let me just check, approximately an hour and 5 or 10 minutes from now, something like that.
Okay, so about an hour and 5 minutes. Dharma Nation YouTube, and of course, I'll get you on the screen here, dharmacentral.com, your main website.
Yes, definitely.
And I think that and one last plug, because I think it's so connected to what we've been talking about today, is your book. Is Dharma Nation is the book, right? The book.
Oh, the book is called The Dharma Manifesto.
The Dharma Manifesto. I'm sorry. Yes, the Dharma Manifesto. Thank you so much.
Yes, it's a very good book. It's people will enjoy that book. It talks about many contemporary topics from the perspective of Dharma, of natural law.
Yes, indeed. And that's something I think we would be a great follow-up to this, would be then talking about these topics and then connect them to natural law and Dharma, I think would be wonderful. So we'll do that next time or one of our future times.
Definitely. Well, thank you again so much, AJ, for the opportunity. I truly appreciate it. You have a wonderful show with a wonderful audience. And once again, yeah, you are one of the best interviewers who I've had. You're truly professional. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And Acharyaji, we'll talk again soon. Have a great day.
All right. Take care.
Okay.
Namaste.
Namaste. Okay, then. All right. Very nice. Great. Well, so that might be one that I need to do a follow-up show about. Just to help you with some vocab. He was using some great, there was, as he's talking, of course, I'm thinking, oh, that's a good word. That's a good word. There's a lot of good vocab words in there that I could review and discuss with you. So I don't know how much you all understood or not. I think, I'm sure you got the main ideas and the big idea. And then, of course, there's just so many ideas, and we didn't have a chance to do a discussion this time because Acharyaji had to go and because he's got these appointments. So we can do that as well. I can do a follow-up show and I can answer some questions myself. Of course, you'll be getting my opinion instead of his, but also next time I'll schedule a show with him. I'll be sure that we'll do it at a time that's where we can get more questions and comments from you. I'll just kind of scan a few questions and comments now myself. But then I got to go too, because I got to go to bed. It's quite late for me. So I just want to say, just lots of people just saying hello. If you tell you what, I'm not going to do questions today. 95% easy for understanding. Okay, great. So that's what I mainly wanted to know. I understood everything, says Umberto. Alexi says 95% for understanding. Great. So fantastic. You guys are very good. Okay, then. I'm going to go and we'll do, we can talk more about this topic because he had so many things he was talking about, great topics, and like we only had an hour, and I was trying to think, oh, that's be a great topic, and that could be a great topic. So there's so many things in what he was saying that we could discuss and kind of dive into. But especially you all know about the media, one of the big topics we were talking about, and how the media is just such a lie and does not represent America, does not represent the people anywhere in the world. And it's really this kind of mind control system. Absolutely. We've talked about this again and again, and it was great to hear Acharyaji's description of that as well. Okay, then. Well, that's all for now. Hope you all had a great time listening to Acharyaji. I'll be back again at my normal time for the show. So lots of love to you. Go to his live stream if you can. So it's in about an hour from now. Dharma Nation on YouTube. Dharma Nation, you can join that live stream. All right. Lots of love to you, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.